This is a video showing basically the method on Foundations Revealed. Jill Sallin wrote about how to take a pattern from a corset. It's a lot. Theoretically, it would work for any garment. If you're talking Victorian clothes, it's quite difficult to do because of the sort of tucks and folds in them, but corsets I find quite easy. So first of all, I'll show you the tools. You need a tape measure. This one is centimetres. Basically I'm using centimetres because it's a smaller measurement, so it's going to be slightly more accurate. I usually work in inches. Corsets generally were drafted in inches, so that's usually going to be more kind of rounder figures when you're working, but my tape measure is only in centimetres, so kind of has decided for me. Using a T-square. If you don't have one, a normal ruler would do. Generally you're going to want one that's longer than 30 centimetres, or 2 tape measures instead. So you've got at least 2 things which are longer than 30 centimetres just in case. I have a flexi curve, just to show you quickly. This is one seam, this is the next. You can sort of go round and then you'd be able to draw around that. Not everyone's going to have one of these, I'm aware, so I'll put that to one side and I won't use it, but that's something you can do if you've got a corset with something like slightly more complex in terms of the shape. And a ruler. This is a flexible ruler and it's also partially see-through, which is useful sometimes when taking measurements. If you're really uncomfortable working with one like that, use whichever you're more comfortable with. I would recommend it being at least partially see-through though. And again, this can work the same as a flexi curve. It won't maintain its shape, but you can sort of measure round a curved seam more accurately. The corset I'm going to be measuring from is a Warner's corset from the 1910s. Because it's one that I own and it's you know, obviously a personal one, I'm absolutely fine to touch it. I mean, you know, theoretically I can do anything to this, it's my property. It's in very, very good condition for its age, so I'm not bothered about it sort of getting rips or anything if I touch it. If you're working from a museum, I know if you go to the Symington collection, they're happy for you to handle the corsets as long as you're not too rough with them. So obviously if your tape measure accidentally touches it, that's not a problem, but don't go sort of shoving them around. I know when I went to the Herbert Art Gallery, they weren't happy with you touching them, but it was okay for me to get up close to measure, so I was able to take patterns from their things. If you go into a museum which is a local authority, they will all have their own rules. Some of them will let you go nearer things than others, but you should be able to take a corset pattern using this method. Sometimes it will just take longer than others if you're not allowed to touch them. How much detail you want to record is entirely down to you. It depends if you're going to be taking a pattern from a corset you own. If you're taking a pattern from something, say you have a corset that you had made before you started making your own, it's a perfect fit and you want to make your own from the same pattern. Or you might be going to a museum and taking something from a collection, or even from a private collection belonging to someone else. On the whole, there are 2 types of corset makers. There are those who want to make a historical garment, true to the original, using historical techniques, and there are those who want to make something a bit more modern. So if you're of the former, you're more likely to want to take note of things like what type of elastic is used on the suspenders, anything like details such as the suspender clips. I know this says rubber button around here, so that might be something you would have take note of, whereas if you're going to be using it to make a more modern interpretation of this corset, you probably wouldn't be interested in that. Always worth taking it down if you have got the time, because you never know what's going to happen in the future. You may really, really regret not writing that down. Nowadays, if you take a camera with you, you can take pictures of any interesting details. So for instance, this has flossing on one of the bones. That would be the first thing I noticed about it to take a picture. I've got elastic around the top, the eyelets are black. Having a look what kind they are, sort of 2-piece eyelets but not with a washer on the back, they're quite strange ones. And also the bones don't come down the whole way. So there's things like that. Also the hook and eye, how long the busk is, the fact that these 2 are closer together, things like that. sometimes you think you're not going to care about that in the future, and you are. I know that happened to me a few times with things from this era which I didn't think I'd ever be interested in. Pick one side of the corset to work from. Sometimes if they're older they may be damaged on one side or damaged on one panel, so you need to work with both halves, but remember it's the same as drafting a pattern, so work from right to left or left to right, depending on which way. I normally draft my patterns so that I start with the centre front panel on this side, but for some reason I decided to start off this way this time. And this is my panel for the front. I've made a note of where the hooks are for the busk, how long the busk is, and then drawn it in. Made a note of where the hook is, and also made a note of the suspender, which is the same width as the front panel, and how long that is when it's fully open. So that's 19 centimetres long. Second panel, across. I'm not going to be including this because this is elastic, so that's something I'm going to draw out separately. So I'm going to draw the elastic out and mark where the panels meet it. But if you look at the back, you can see here there are 2 rows of stitching attaching the fabric panel to the suspender, to the elastic, sorry. So I can see the second line here, which is where I'll be measuring to. Generally what I will do when I'm taking a historical pattern is to measure how long each panel is down the middle. In this case it's going to be from the bottom down the middle of the panel to that second line, 29.1 centimetres. So I would then, using the T-square, which is going to give me a straight line, draw 29.1 centimetres. I forgot to mention earlier in the tools you want a very sharp pencil. That's 29 centimetres long from there to there. What I would then do, and the reason why you do need things which are a bit longer, I'm working in centimetres, so I'll just put this here. Measure. So for instance, I might say every 2 centimetres or every 3 centimetres I'm going to take a measurement. So if I measure up 1, 2, 3 centimetres is here. Then take my tape measure, 3 centimetres I'll measure across from one seam to the next. So that's 4.3 centimetres. So on this line I'll measure again 3 centimetres. And from here split that across evenly, so that's going to be 2.1 either side. You basically do this all the way up. If you've got a curve, for example at the waist you might want to, or at the bust you might want to measure every 1 centimetre, and then at the end you'll connect the dots. So I'm going to finish filming this bit now, and then I'll start again once I've got a bit further up than just 1 or 2, so that I can show you how to connect it all together. What you do once you've got your dots marked out, I don't know if you can see them, I have taken a picture. You just connect the dots between them. This is only very, very rough. If you have a flexi curve or a French curve or something, that would be ideal to be able to find the right way of doing it. Should look vaguely hourglass, even if it is a 1910s one, it should go in at the waist. So that's around here on this one somewhere, where it goes in. After that, if you do want to take the details from the corset, what you would do, for instance on this one I would know that I've got measure how far down the elastic comes, for instance, so I might then do, this is very rough, I haven't measured it out or anything, like something like this. You can see where the bone stops on it is here, so I might make, mark out that's where the bone is. On this one I'd mark out the flossing, so that's again only very rough, but if there's any details on it that you do want to capture, make sure you measure them out and then mark them on your pattern. This is 6 panels across, I already know this. So what we'll do, this one is panel 1, this is panel 2, make sure that you mark any grain lines you can see on it if they're sort of on the bias or anything other than just straight up and down. Make sure you mark the top of your pattern. Just treat it as you would treat a normal corset pattern, basically, as if you drafted it yourself from scratch. The more detail you can get on it, the better. Obviously, if you're not able to capture it all in the time that you've got with the item, then try and take as many pictures as you can so that you can get the basic skeleton of the pattern done and then add to it once you've got more time. Hopefully that's shown people a bit better. I know I was shown in person anyway because I did Jill Salon's summer school a couple of years ago, but I would probably have benefited from seeing this had I not, so figured it would be good to share with people. Hopefully it's useful to some people anyway.